Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at Pilot Replicas 148th Saab J21 A-3 Kit. This is their first uh, plastic model offering and one I've been kind of looking forward to doing. So let's open her up and take a look. Alright, first up we've got our fuselage and tail booms. The molding on the plastic is very sharp and crisp. In addition, the plastic has a very sturdy feel to it. Very impressive. So out the gate. One thing I did notice, however, is that there is an overabundance of ejector pin marks, and unfortunately, a lot of them are in the fuselage wells, the gear bay wells, and that, given the molded on detail, is going to take a bit of doing to clean up, which is unfortunate, as the detailing that they do give is halfway decent. So continuing on, next up we've got our wing halves, and we have a single bottom piece and two upper halves. Excuse me. Detail, much the same, is very crisp and very clean. Ejector pin marks are still here, but fortunately they're all in the insides of the wing, so they would fortunately not be seen. Continuing on, we've got our landing gear, which is really interesting on this kit, as the main gear actually have what normally you would see as a nose gear on a lot of other aircraft, which is just a neat little hint to see about this aircraft. Our nose gear, our various gear bay doors, our main wheels, which are quite hefty and done in two halves, as well as our nose gear. Thankfully, the various gear bay doors don't have ejector pin marks like the gear bay wells do, so that's a fortunate thing. One detail to note, though, is these oleo struts, as they are very tiny, and I honestly see them being quite difficult to get off the sprue how they've done it. If they had done it as a single attachment point, I think it would have been a lot easier and less likely to break. Much the same with these parts. But overall, it's pretty well done. Continuing on, we've got our last sprue, which has our cockpit plate, as well as our nose gear bay. Unfortunately, much again, there is a pretty nasty ejector pin mark right here in the middle, which is going to be a bit of a bear to clean up. But thankfully, it's only one as opposed to several on the main gears. Excuse me. Moving on, we've got our front dash, which is very nicely and crisply done. As far as in-kit dashes go, this is one of the nicer ones, as all the details are crisp and fine and aren't over intrusive. One thing I did notice is that they don't give any of the dial as raised details, and once we get into the decals, I'll show you that. But overall, nice job there. We've got our exhaust nozzles, which are a little on the finer side. I would say it might be worthwhile to get aftermarket to get a little more detail there, but they're passable. Sidewall detail is much the same as the instrument panel. It is very nicely done, and fortunately there's no real ejector markings there. Last up, we have our clear parts. If I can get this open. Yeah, one thing I'll also note, and I'll show you on the decals as I kept those in the bag, is that they did a really nice job of bagging the parts so they're easy to get out. Overall, clear parts are a little on the thicker side. Another thing I noticed is like the canopy detail here on these two parts are on the thick side, which is a little disappointing. Unfortunately, I would say overall the clear parts are the weakest part of the kit. They do the trick, but they definitely could be on the thinner side. And get that back in. This is what I meant when I said all the bags came with this sort of single piece of opening, which makes it very easy to get in and out. Another thing I wanted to mention is it does come with a little bit of photo etching, such as for the oleo stretch, which I mentioned previously, being air canopy frames as well as seat belts. So it's a nice little inclusion. Continuing on to the decals. Overall, I'd have to say this is some of the crispest decals I've ever handled. All of them are very sharp and very well printed. Color are sharp, clear, and just a fantastic job. I mean, I honestly wish a lot of decals would be done in this manner, as they've turned out fantastic. But other than that, everything's nice, sharp, crisp. You got marking options for 3 different aircraft, and I'll go into that in the instructions. Set this back in. Now, moving on to the instructions, and an interesting move, they've printed it on this sort of almost plastically laminated type instruction booklet. It shows the 3D models and the buildup of the parts, which I think is very smart, as it gives you a very clear idea of what you need to do and how you need to do it. Only real complaint I would say is it might have been smarter to have the seatbelt instructions done next to where they actually build up the seat, but other than that, it's very easy to follow and understand. Because of this, despite having some little intricacies, it does make it a lot easier to build. One thing I did want to note is here on the wingtip fuel tanks is that their placement is a little vague. And in fact, I actually had to go online and look up photos of this aircraft with the wingtip tanks installed to see really how they went on, where they went over, under, or attached onto the tips. And it would have been nice had they shown exactly how they went on, just to simplify the instructions a little. But overall, thanks to the instructions, I think this would be a pretty easy kit to put together. Continuing on, there is a bit of stenciling to it, which thankfully they, again, do a very nice job with the guide. Also of an interesting note, they do include measurements for how far inboard you need to place the various insignias, which is definitely a nice inclusion. Now, as I said, you got marking options for 3 different aircraft. First 2 you see here. They give color callouts. Fortunately, not as exact callouts. They just give you a couple different options that are close to the real color. I would say definitely do your homework and try to find a more precise coloring if you need to. But overall, definitely a good start from Pilot Replicas. It's not without its issues, specifically in the realm of making sure it doesn't put ejector pins where they're going to require a lot of effort to clean up, or ideally put them where you don't have to clean them up. But overall, it's definitely a nice kit. It is a little more complicated, but at the same time, I think it pairs it in such a way with the well done instructions that I would say it's a mid-range difficulty kit. But yeah, it's definitely one to look at. You really don't see a lot of kits of Saab aircraft. I think, aside from one other one from Pilot Replicas, I think there's only two out there: Hasegawa's Draken and Trumpter's Vegan. And yeah, actually, now that I think about the Griffin from Kitty Hawk, but earlier Saab stuff you really don't see. Now that I forgive me on that, but yeah, definitely one to look at, possibly picking up. It looks to be a really interesting build. So until next time.